I'm going out on a limb here. I've worked on 3 presidential campaigns, been a part of the message operation for each one of them, for better or for worse. I've never seen a political advertisement with a message as searing as this one. Watch.
I was sworn into the United States Senate next to a hospital bed. My wife and daughter had been killed in a car crash. And lying in that bed were my 2 surviving little boys. I couldn't imagine what it would have been like if we didn't have the health care they needed immediately. 40 years later, one of those little boys, my son Bo, was diagnosed with terminal cancer and given only months to live. I can't fathom what would have happened if the insurance companies had said for the last 6 months of his life, you're on your own. The fact of the matter is, healthcare is personal to me. Obamacare is personal to me. When I see the president try to tear it down and others propose to replace it and start over, that's personal to me too. We got to build on what we did because every American deserves affordable health care.
Joining this conversation, Republican political consultant and Vox contributor Shermichael Singleton and MSNBC correspondent Garrett Haake, who will be back out traveling with Joe Biden tomorrow in South Carolina. Garrett, I got to start with you. I, as I said, worked on 3 presidential campaigns, was involved in every ad that went out, and have never seen an ad like this. I don't know who made it. I'm sure you could get to the bottom of that by this time tomorrow. But this is why Joe Biden is atop, certainly the polls that we saw today. This is why Joe Biden misspeaking, and I say this as someone who worked for George W. Bush, isn't seeing anything out of his poll numbers from misspeaking because voters take into account the whole man, the whole story. Voters don't care about that, FYI. And this ad shows to me that if Joe Biden's going to lose, he's going to lose having left every scrap of himself on the field. He's going to rip his heart open and he's going to say, you know why I was friends with John McCain until the day he died? Because I'm a real bleeping person at a time when there's something else, Donald Trump, someone who seems to put on a different personality every day and everywhere. And at a time when a lot of Democrats seem to be playing a little bit of small ball at this point. What was the strategy behind this ad?
Well, look, I think part of the reason why an ad like this could or should work is because it is so consistent with the person, right? I mean, Joe Biden, we've talked about this before, leads every day with his heart, for better or worse. He's a very emotional candidate. I think he would be perfectly willing to admit that. It's part of the reason why he makes some of the mistakes, quote unquote, that he makes on the trail, because he's just going to be who he is, come better or worse. And you see some of that in this ad. Secondarily, setting aside the personal nature of it, it also speaks to the single most important issue to Democratic voters, other than beating Trump, that we hear over and over and over again, which is health care. Biden has bet the farm that Democratic voters would rather protect Obamacare and build on it than try something new. And to dovetail that with an authentic, personal connection, one that he's been reticent to make in the past, to talk so much about his own personal tragedy in such an open way, particularly on television, as opposed to doing it when he's got a hand on the shoulder of a voter, which I think is something he's much more comfortable with. It all lines up into the kind of thing that should be effective. We'll see, again, in the sort of modern era, how much any television ad moves anybody anymore. But this is, I think, as authentic of an ad as you'll see from a candidate in this cycle.
And having been involved in the creation of political ads, you cannot make an ad out of something that doesn't exist. So here's the non-ad version of Joe Biden's humanity, speaking with a gentleman in New Hampshire with a stutter.
I have a stutter myself, so I find them very inspirational.
Well, by the way, you know I used to be a very bad stutterer.
Yeah, I know. I saw you.
And I've spoken a lot about it. I'm involved with the national organization as well. Yeah. It does not define you.
I know.
It cannot define you.
I know.
And by the way, you know, it's a matter. I wish we could talk more.
Yeah.
You give me your number, I'll call you. I know it's hardest to talk on the phone. I know that. I know that's the most difficult thing to do.
I guess, Garrett, these moments, and I aired the entirety of the exchange between Beto O'Rourke and the community member there in El Paso when he was in pain. I guess I'm so starved for humanity in our politics that these moments really stand out to me. And it is a different skill from being able to soar at a debate, from being able to soar behind a podium and a teleprompter, to be able to talk to someone on a rope line. And again, I'm looking for these moments. So if you see them, roll on them. We'll air them here. Any Democrat that does this, because what you have in Donald Trump is so different. And I just to make a point, bear with me, folks. I'm going to show you some of that contrast.
The poor guy, you got to see this guy. Oh, I don't know what I said. I don't remember.
Believe me, she would not be my first choice, that I can tell you. Man. You don't know. That would not be my first choice.
Yes, she is a low IQ individual, Maxine Waters. I said it the other day. I mean, honestly, she's somewhere in the mid-60s, I believe that.
That guy's got a serious weight problem. Go home, start exercising. Get him out of here, please. Got a bigger problem than I do.
So, Garrett, I won't make you jump on any of those comments, but just the contrast between every person, Marianne Williamson, Andrew, the entire Democratic field, and someone who, in order there, mocked a disabled journalist, an African-American lawmaker. He was responding to an credible allegation of sexual assault, rape, by saying that a woman wasn't his type, and he called someone fat at a rally.
Yeah, let me take that in a couple of different pieces. I mean, look, what I've come to decide from talking to voters and talking to candidates all around the country, that the only unforgivable sin in American politics is being inauthentic, right? Voters want to see you. They want to know you. They want to get you. Republican voters weren't surprised that Donald Trump was a jerk. They felt that way about him and voted for him anyway because they thought it was consistent. They thought that was what he wanted. They wanted somebody to come in and break the system. And sure enough, that's what they got. Likewise, with some of these Democratic candidates, we are seeing a different kind of authenticity, one that speaks to a whole wide swath of voters who've been turned off by the authentic Donald Trump that they've gotten to know over the last couple of years. I've covered Biden in all the early states. I've seen him at a bunch of events. He is 1,000 times more effective at talking to people one-on-one the minute he steps off the stage than he is at any time that he is on the stage. And he's not alone in that capacity. A number of these candidates, the more skillful, the bigger skill in politics, I think perhaps the one that takes you further is that ability to make the one-on-one connection, then give the soaring speech. And those candidates are going to have longevity, and you see that so much better from Biden when he's off stage than when he's on.
I agree. Nicole, this is what I think. I think the Biden campaign is recognizing that more and more people are beginning to pay attention to this process. And in thinking about that, you want to start talking about specific issues. What not a better specific issue than to talk about health care?
Yeah.
When you have coming from this administration, you look at a place like Texas, where they filed a lawsuit to dismantle parts of Obamacare. You look at what the president has said about Obamacare, or even polling indicates a significant percentage of even Republicans like certain aspects of Obamacare. Biden talked about, you know what, let's build on the Affordable Care Act. I think about South Carolina, where a lot of African Americans are. They love President Obama. They love the Affordable Care Act. African American people are very pragmatic. The idea of starting over again to start something anew, which is not guaranteed to pass, versus building on what currently exists, makes a lot of sense. So I think Joe Biden was hitting on a lot of things, and if you were to ask me, he hit a home run.
Listen, and no less than John Boehner made this point during the Obamacare debate, that once you give people something, Republicans are foolish to think you can take it away.
So I'll tell you, people know I live in Harlem, I work out in Harlem, and so I talk politics with the guys that I work out with in Harlem. And I'm always asking them, so what are you thinking? And there are a lot of people who are super engaged. There are some who are not. But I'm with you, Nicole. There's this thing about Biden. And by the way, as you know, I'm highly critical. I'm one of those people who says that one of the things he needs to do to actually win, I believe, is to kind of come to Jesus, come clean, just say, look, I've learned a lot about a lot of things, right? He can, I mean, I'm talking specifically about immigration, detention, deportation, but it can be a lot of things, civil rights, incarceration, women. But to kind of own that moment, I think that coupled with what he has, which is this kind of, God, we just want somebody, and we know he makes mistakes because he's old and he probably repeats himself, but you know what? He's like a nice guy. Like, he's a nice guy. And I agree, you can't kind of fake that.
Nope, absolutely not.
So the amazing thing about these moments that Garrett describes and that are so compelling to you is that he's empathizing with people who are struggling. There's another one on the trail where he talks to a guy with cancer, and he also says, "Give me your number." He calls these people. That's what Joe Biden does. People from the most famous to the least have gotten calls
and we actually don't,
from Joe Biden.
We don't see that. You know, it's not like we're seeing like the phone call or like behind the scenes.
But this is the story of Joe Biden because you know, grief is, as all of the people who love him say, is his superpower. Right. But anyone struggling, cancer, stuttering, this is a man who's had brain surgery, and that entire ad leaves himself out. He's trying to show people he's been at the mercy of insurance companies, scared out of his mind for his loved ones. And he didn't mention his own health scares and his own brain surgery when he was also at the mercy of insurance companies. He was empathizing. He was showing people, I've been there when you feel so helpless and so powerless and you're so dependent. And it really, that's why it's so compelling, because it's all about other people and not about his own pain.
And empathy, I think, is so critically important. Nicole, you said people don't care about the gaffes. Because when you look at what we currently have, you have in Joe Biden, who I would argue is someone who's selfless, someone who's compassionate. So not a perfect person, someone who's relatable. And when you think about Donald Trump, you think about the current state of the Republican Party, compassion out of the window, customs of behavior out of the window, morals don't matter, ethics are things that govern our behavior. None of those things matter. And then you have Joe Biden, who's the front runner, who says, you know what, I'm not perfect. I've made a share of mistakes, as we all have, but there are some things that I think all of us should be able to come together on. Your point about John McCain, we're going to have ideological differences, but how do we figure out how to work together on the things that we all agree on, the things that impact us all? I think that separates him disparately from Trump, but I also think it separates him in many ways from many of the other Democratic candidates.
Real quick.
One thing on healthcare, I hope at the debate he's not pulling on the heartstrings and just says taking away private insurance is an electoral loser.
Yeah.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.